Thank you for joining me. Today I want to talk about a video that I've seen going viral, but like everybody commenting on it seems to be missing what I think is hilarious about this video. So I'm going to play it and then we will discuss what I think is so funny and interesting about this whole situation.
I'm not saying that you got to live, breathe, die, fight the power, but you do have to have some things ingrained in the way that you move about your day, period, to understand that the work never stops. So we just got to find that balance.
And for you, I want somebody who knows that women can have babies.
Oh, okay.
Only women can have babies. I just want to let you know that.
Interesting. There are other people who can have babies.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if they have a uterus, they can have babies. But they just might not identify as women.
Okay.
Those are two different things. Like you can be biologically female, but you can't be biologically woman. Because woman is a gender construct. A social construct. But if you got a uterus, yeah, you can have a baby.
Yes, that's the point. If you have a uterus, you can have a baby.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we agree on that.
Remember that I'm supposed to have visually stimulating stuff in the background, so I moved my desk a little bit. First off, as a side note, though, to this video, I think it's so funny that, like, I just assumed that Jess Hilarious person was a lesbian, I guess just because of the ball cap. My brain was doing all kinds of things. I looked it up, and it seems like she's straight. She, at least at some point, or does have a boyfriend named Chris. But because she's wearing a cap, I just thought that was a lesbian. Or I don't know, there's something about the way she talked. I thought she was a stud, but then it's like, okay, black and pink and those big old lips. And now that those might be her natural lips because she's a straight woman, but if she were a lesbian, then that seems like it would have to be filler. Because I don't think God makes lesbians with big lips. You ever seen a lesbian with big old lips? Big old butt. That happens, and that's embarrassing. But I don't think lesbians ever have naturally big lips, but prove me wrong. First of all, I find this conversation really frustrating and telling and illuminating, and I think everyone's kind of missing the point. Because for one thing, it really seems like Jess Hilarious, when she says only women can have babies, it feels like what she's really trying to say is only females can have babies. And I genuinely wonder whether some of the people who are very insistent on saying that, you know, men can't have babies, if they really even understand what the progressive side, I'm just going to say the woke. What the woke people are trying to say when they say men can have babies, I think some of them think that the woke people mean actual males, as if trans women could have babies, or, you know, just males in general could have babies, as opposed to what the woke really mean, which is, at least with our current technological situation, that females who identify as men can sometimes have babies if they didn't go through the whole puberty blocking thing and they happen to still be able to, you know, some people, they can't eventually have babies, but if they've taken testosterone for too long and whatever, or they've had a hysterectomy, then they can't. But there are some people who identify as men who can have babies, especially if they do, like, they have to detransition for a while. It's a whole thing. But that's what people mean. So I don't know with Jess Hilarious if she even know. You know, I think these people are kind of potentially talking across each other. So some people just think that there are woke people who basically are going 2 + 2 is 5. Men can have babies because we say so. Whereas from a conservative person's perspective, from the way a lot of non-woke people would talk, what they would say is, oh, you're just saying that the women who think they're men can have babies? Well, yeah, of course they can have babies. Again, that's what they would say. I would say a female person with a uterus who identifies as a man can in some situations still have babies, even though it might take some hormonal switcherooing again to accomplish it. But yeah, so the reason that I think that Jess Hilarious is probably in that camp that I'm talking about is because as soon as Lynae says, if you have a uterus, you can have a baby, Jess is like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's the point. If you have a uterus, you can have a baby. So what she seems to be trying to say is only females can have babies, which is true. And that brings me to the main point of why I want to talk about this video.
You can be biologically female, but you can't be biologically woman. Because woman is a gender construct, a social construct.
So this is fun because this idea that we are going to use the words sex and gender distinctly and separately is actually the point that a lot of what you might call gender critical people or certain types of feminists or various women have been trying to get everyone to get on board with for decades. That, so you've got like red team people, some of the red team people, when they're like, there's just two genders, just two of them, just boys and girls. A lot of us are trying to say, yes, well, I think what you mean is there are two sexes, and even that is a little bit fuzzy, but there are two reproductive categories, large gamete makers and small gamete makers. Point being, there are two reproductive categories. Yes, some might say that there are two sexes. That's a whole other debate about the best way to talk about biological reality. But that's the point that, again, like the feminists, the gender critical people have been making for a long time. It's like, hey, can we please separate these two words? Because if what you're saying is gender is a spectrum or gender is a panoramic, anything goes, yeah. You can make up an infinite amount of genders and let that, whatever word you want, represent the fact that you want to have short hair and long earrings on Tuesdays, and on Wednesdays you want to be fully looking like what's marketed to men right now, and on Saturdays you flip a coin and maybe you'll wind up cutting your hair short. Yeah, you could express yourself however you want. I would include into this, like, this basically gender vibes is what we're talking about. What vibe do you want to go for, masculine or feminine? I would include the concept of gender roles, except it's 2025 and we don't really do that anymore in our society. Like, we don't have job. You can do whatever job you want, inside or outside of the home. There's very little that is still restricted based on your sex. So gender roles, but you might still say gender roles are, maybe you feel more womanly because you want to take care of the kids, and you feel more manly because you want to hold the door open for someone. And then some people are going to get mad at you because but someone will get mad at you no matter what. There's no way to talk about this stuff without people getting mad. Point being, she's talking about separating the concept of sex and gender, and I'm all about that. I think that would be great if we could get on board with everybody, because a lot of times we're talking past each other with all this shit. Again, someone hears you say men can get pregnant and they think you mean males can get pregnant, whereas you were trying to say females who identify in a masculine way or as men can sometimes get pregnant. Just that same way, when people say there's only two genders, what they mean obviously is that there are only two sexes. Again, we could debate that in some ways, but that's what they mean. They don't mean there's only two ways to express yourself in this planet. They might mean they don't really want to use pronouns for something besides biological sex, but again, that's a whole nother conversation. Obviously, what they mean by two genders is that there are two sexes. They do not mean there's only two ways to be in this world. There's only two vibes that you can have. Okay, so before I make my really big point, let's just watch Lynae say her piece one more time here.
You can be biologically female, but you can't be biologically woman, because woman is a gender construct, a social construct.
Finally, what I think is the most interesting thing about this video is that even though it's being shown as a big win for the anti-transphobic idea of Jess hilarious, it actually is very affirming to a lot of I don't even know gender critical, but just like a lot of moderate types have been saying to the activists of the trans stripes for many years and have been getting in a lot of trouble for, which is, yeah, okay, when you guys say trans women are women, and therefore that's why they should be allowed to compete against cis women or females or AFABs in sports, full stop, or that's why they should be allowed in locker rooms with women, full stop, or that's why they should be allowed in female prisons, full stop. That's when we have an issue, because if you say trans women are women and therefore, well, but we called them women's sports because when we divided men's sports and women's sports, that was at a time when it would have been very impolite to say male sports or female sports. We were then using man and woman synonymously with adult human male, adult human female. Now we're all trying to evolve and use those kind of terms a little differently and say, okay, or not we're all, but a lot of us who are kind of in the middle, kind of progressive, whatever, are trying to say, okay, cool, yeah. There are people who were born male who feel really womanly. And especially if they take cross-sex hormones, can become much more womanly, even in a phenotypic expression way, but they feel more like women. They feel an enormous amount of dysphoria being in a male body, and they really want to live as women. They want to live as much as possible in a way that society views them as a woman. And then vice versa is also true. Like, take me, for instance. Okay, I am biologically female. There's really no two ways about that. I have periods. I have boobs and a vagina and all those things. But I don't feel like a woman. There's no real, I don't relate to that concept, except every now and then I kind of do. But it's a very whatever thing to me. I kind of feel like a dude. I would never really say I feel like a man. I feel manly sometimes when I'm doing manly stuff. I don't really want the world to see me as a man because I'm not strong enough to, I can help you move, but I can't be the only person who helps you move. And I don't want you to see me as a man because I don't want you to see me as male. I don't want you to see me as someone with the sex drive that is potentially violent and dangerous. So I'm in this place where I'm like, yeah, I want you to see me as kind of a dude because I do have a lot of masculine qualities. I exclusively date women. I like having short hair. I wear clothes almost exclusively marketed to men or unisex. There's really I don't think I ever wear anything marketed to women. Maybe occasionally shoes, but even then you'd think they were marketed to men. Anyway, I do stand-up comedy. I live a very masculine life. But if I were going to play in single-sex sports if I were trying to be in professional sports, if I were in a race, well, sometimes I do foot races, I compete against females because I am a female. My concept of my own gender or lack thereof, my thought of myself as kind of a guy doesn't matter because gender, the social construct, has nothing to do with sports. And let's just keep it at sports. I don't want to get into the whole complicated, because it's even more complicated in many ways when you get to prisons and women's shelters and locker rooms. We'll save that for another day. But let's just talk sports. Obviously, I should be competing against females in sports. So when we say women's sports, we never really meant people whose gender vibe seems womanly or who have either are female or have dysphoria. We meant female. The reason there are male sports and female sports is because males and females have different physiologies. And males are at a great advantage to females on average and at the margins where it really matters, especially in professional sports and record keeping and in terms of people's physical safety in certain combat sports. So that's why we're separating those things. Now, again, there are sports where maybe men or males don't really have an advantage or much of an advantage. And those sports are like ultra marathons that are longer than 120 miles. Maybe it's called the biathlon or something, where you're on skis and you're doing archery stuff. We might just not have that much data on that because there's probably only like 12 Swedes who even do it. But if we say gender is a social construct, then yeah, social constructs don't have anything to do with the very scientific matter of separating sports into the two categories. And for those of you who have not been paying attention to this culture war issue the way that I and many people I know have been for the last 10 years or more, you probably don't realize how much there have been activists of the trans or trans ally variety who have tried to really maintain that trans people are the biological sex that they identify as instead of the one that they were born as, or have tried to basically obfuscate the reality of biological sex. In fact, I remember my ex-best friend. We were best friends for many years. We did a podcast together called Gender Fluids for like 7 years. It's a hilarious podcast. It's still up if you want to look. It's about sex and gender and kinks and fetishes. And it was very fun. And I am sad to have lost that friend and that podcast. Huge disappointment to my career, but because I don't, for instance, think that 3-year-olds should be told that they might be in the wrong body, then we can't be friends. But I remember it was 2016, I think, 2017, somewhere around there, where I mentioned something about her being biologically male. And at the time when she was upset about that, she was upset that she said it wasn't kind to point that out. And I was like, but I'm trying to talk about something that's related to biology now, and like biological stuff that can't even change from hormones. I don't even remember what the context was, but I was trying to have a very scientifically precise conversation, and she said, we can't do that because it's impolite. And I thought, this is going to be really hard if we can't really call a spade, then how are we going to talk about things? And within a year after that, it was, I kept seeing people more and more, especially online, but also in her and her friends group, saying, actually, trans women are biologically female. And again, I get it to some extent. A lot of the times what they mean is after several years of taking testosterone blockers and estrogen pills, I want to say estrogen because it's more fun. Don't you love when the little Brit, etc. types say estrogen? Anyway, after years of taking estrogen and testosterone blockers, their levels get down to female typical levels. And it's like, yes, but that doesn't take away all of the years of virilization, masculinization that you went through during puberty. I mean, I'm talking about people who did not have puberty blockers. Those people, it's a whole different conversation. But for the trans women who did virilize, masculinize until they were 16, 18, 20, 22, 24 years old, my friend, I can't remember exactly, but she was in her 20s when she first transitioned hormonally. It's like there's still a lot of male biology, and regardless of however long you take HRT or any surgeries you have, there will always be aspects of male biology that remain. Some of it has to do with the Y chromosome versus having two X chromosomes. Some of it has to do with, again, just your body having developed so that your heart and lungs will always be bigger. Your femurs are bigger. You have muscle tone from before, etc. Okay, so now I'm going to show you some examples of some crazy things I've seen people on the left saying that are denying the reality that Lynae was expressing. Okay, this one is really interesting because it starts off making the same point that Lynae is basically making. Biological woman doesn't mean anything. Then she says, a cis woman is not a biological woman. She simply identifies as a woman and was forcibly assigned female at birth based on unscientific, archaic, misinformative notions of biology. Wait. If woman's a social construct, but female is biology, why are we okay, I can be with you if you're saying woman isn't a biological word. But then if you say that being female is assigned and not observed, or, even you could say, every now and then there's some intersex shit that goes awry, and so maybe it's not exactly a foolproof observation, but it's still an observation of genitalia, not like a random assignment. People, as if it's like, oh, it's a flip of the coin whether vagina or penis means anything. It's almost always true that you're going to be biologically male or female based on, observably, biologically male or female, observable by your genitals. But even with the intersex stuff mixed in there as noise, it's not unscientific notions of biology. It might be archaic notions of gender vibe expression to think that someone born with a vagina is going to want to grow up and date men and be a mom and have long hair and wear dangly earrings. But biologically, it's not archaic to say, oh, look, we have a little female here. This one's just frustrating and annoying. I mean, here you go. Certain gender activists fought and argued and lobbied for dictionaries to change the definition of female, not just woman, but female, to say this, that gender is having the opposite gender identity to male. It's not a gender identity. It might be a sex identity. Can we just call it a sex identity? This is crazy making when we can't get anyone on the same page about how to use the words male and female or gender and sex. On the one side, you got Republicans being obstinate about there's just two genders. And on the other side, you got these activist trans types, some of them, who are also kind of saying that. Like, we're not going to distinguish between gender and sex. We're going to insist that these male and female terms are used in the same way as man and woman. If you identify as a woman, you're female. Okay, like, I kind of understand where this person is trying to be coming from, but look, the reality is your chromosomes and your genitals have an enormous correlation to your likely criminality. Males are much, much, much more likely to commit violent crimes, especially sexual crimes and especially murder, than females. Yes, some of that can be tempered with HRT, but that doesn't change that if you're a betting man and you want to put a bet, if you see one random XX person and one random XY person, or you see one random person born with a vagina or what looks like a vagina and one person born with what looks like a penis, if you want to say which one of them most likely committed a violent crime, put your money on the XY penis person. On the other hand, if you want to bet on shoplifting, credit card fraud, or Munchausen by proxy, place your bet on the XX vagina person. Criminality is, it's one of the best bets you could make. Better than anything you'll find on Call Sheet. Sponsored by, I'm just kidding, but hey, sponsor me. I really am too tired to know where to begin on this one. All I can say is look at the date and you'll see this person was truly ahead of their time in the gender insanity.